Welcome to the Getting Started Robotmaster Introductory Series. In this lesson, I'm going to be going through a basic overview of the software, as well as some of the buttons across the top of our device and task tabs. My name is John Huster. I'm with Sophos Robotics, and let's get started. So when you open Robotmaster, I just wanted to go over some of the basic user interface buttons and navigation styles for the software. So to begin, we'll start with going over the controls for how to move around in the software here. To pan like this, you're going to click and hold your middle mouse wheel button. To dynamically roll, you're going to click and hold the middle mouse wheel button and then hold Control on your keyboard, and that will allow you to rotate dynamically in the viewport. To zoom in and out, we're going to use the scroll wheel. So as I scroll away from myself, it's going to push everything in the viewport away from me. And as I scroll towards myself, it's going to pull it close. So those are the navigation controls. If you want to change them, there are a couple of different options. If we go up here to the top left button and click on the menu icon, we can go to Options, and in the General tab, you can see down here there is a 3D navigation style. If you click the drop down, you can switch between the Robotmaster native controls, which is what I just went over, or you can use Inventor, Mastercam with a reverse zoom wheel, or SolidWorks. A couple other tips are, you can set your theme here for light or dark mode. Auto calculate is something that I like to have checked if I don't have a lot of tool paths in the program that I'm working on. You can go through and look at some of these other options. The only other big one might be if you like to use a space mouse. You can go to the space mouse icon, and this is where you would adjust all of those sensitivities. So let's get started with a general overview of the software. Up here in the top left, you can see I have a device tab, and I also have a task tab. And the device tab is where our robot motion is going to be adjusted. So this is where we would import your robot cell, your robot tool, and then we would dictate how we want the robot to move. Wrist positive, wrist negative. Do we want any rotation around the Z-axis of our tool frame? All kinds of things. And in later episodes, we'll dive into some of those details. We also have what's called a task tab up here next to device. And if I click on that, this is going to be where we import our part and where we create our tool path for that part. So over here on the left, you can see that I have a parts section where I can click this plus icon. It'll open my file explorer, and then I can navigate to wherever my part is located, whether that's a step file, an IGES file, a SolidWorks part or assembly, a Parasolid, whatever the file type may be, and I'll put a list right here of all the file types that you're able to get. Under operations, if we click on the plus icon, depending on what modules you have, it will allow you to create the tool paths that are related to those modules. So the modules are contouring and cycles is a module, and that's essentially edge following and hole drilling. There's a welding module as well. So you get welding and welding with touch sensing. And then there's a surface path module here. We have feature-based paths. Coming soon will also be a cladding path. So we'll have those soon that we can add in as well, and then a pick and place. And down here we have custom frames, and we'll go over these in a later tutorial as well. Essentially, this allows you to create a user frame or create a couple frames to, let's say, mate a part to a fixture. This is where we would create frames and be able to use them in our workspace. Down below, we also have an import CAM button. So if you have a G-code file that you would like to use from another CAM software, you can import a CAM file as well. And then down here is our tool library, or our tool manager, and this is going to be where we create new tools, such as welding torch tips or buffing wheels, things like that. Down here, this little trash can is going to be delete the current task. So if I wanted to delete this task, I would click this trash can. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, if you wanted to have multiple tasks in this program, you could do that as well by clicking new task. So I'm going to delete this task too. Down here on the bottom, we have our play bar. We have one contour, so you can see that's labeled here. If we were to do another one, it would sequence them in order, and you could kind of scroll and see how that path is playing out. Over on the right, we have a pseudo code kind of point list, and essentially what this is going to be telling you is the type of move, rapid move, which is usually a joint move, or a linear move, which is a linear move. If we had circular moves or move Cs, we would see that in here as well. Now I'm going to go over some of the button icons up here at the top. The first one that we have is a fit to screen. So if I'm zoomed way out, I can click on this icon and it will bring it and center it right back in my viewport. Next to that, I have some view settings, just your basic ISO, top, front, back, left, right, and bottom. And do an ISO view, fit to screen. Next, we have our display settings, and you can see we have a workpiece with a slider bar, so this will allow us to visualize our workpiece or make it disappear. We also have a tool slider, and the tool is kind of small, but you can see it right here, and I can make that appear or disappear as well. There's some other options down here that you can explore. You can see all of the path points that we have. We can see the vectors that are normal to the surface, things like that. Next, we're going to have our path drawing settings. And if I click on this icon, currently I have it set to show path, which is typically what I keep it on. But if I would want to go to hide path, you can see my path is going to disappear. If I do draw or erase path, as I simulate through my play bar, it's going to draw or erase the path. So as I play through this simulation, you can see I've got some blue lines and some orange lines. Essentially, these blue lines are going to be path critical lines, and these orange lines are going to be transition lines. I'm going to come back up here and just click Show Path. This next one is going to be display settings for the part. So if I click here, usually I keep mine on shaded with edges. If you want shaded, you can do that as well. Or if you want just the wireframes, you can select that as well. Usually I keep mine on shaded with edges, unless I'm trying to get to a hard to reach toolpath, in which case I can do wireframe to kind of help assist creating that toolpath. The next section here is going to be our selection settings, and this is going to allow you to select the types of objects that are in your file, so solids or surfaces, wireframes, points, or color. Now for color here, what you can do is you can click on this eyedropper icon and it will bring you back to the workspace, and I can left click on a surface. And then when I come back, you can see filter by color is going to be set to whatever the color of the surface I selected was. And then I can activate this and just select components that are that color. Be careful when you use this one. This is an easy one for you to accidentally leave on and then wonder why when you're trying to select something, it's not selecting. From there, we've got window selection settings. So if I left click, hold, and drag, and then release my left mouse click, you can see I can window select and grab objects. If I were to change these sections, or this selection from inside to boundary, it's only going to pick up on those surfaces where the boundary is crossing through. Usually I just leave this on inside. The next one is our magnet settings. And this one is going to be for snap settings essentially. Edge endpoints, arc center points, frame origins, edge middle point, and point. I can show a quick demo of this. If I go over to this measurement tool and I say I want to measure a distance, you can see that it's going to snap to that corner, snap to this corner here, and over here in the bottom left you can see it's going to give me all the information relative to those points, you know, the distance between the coordinates of those points, and finally a straight line distance here. So that's about everything in the task tab. Let's jump over to the device tab. And in the device tab, I have my robot, and you can see there's this pink bubble that's around my robot. This is actually my inner and outer reaches, so the limits of my robot. And this is all from the wrist center of the robot here. It's not necessarily from your TCP. This way we can always, you know, reach our objects inside this boundary. So this is our outer limit. This kind of acorn shape is our inner limit. This is really good for, you know, quick reach study, things like that. And to turn that off, that is the icon that's up here that is workspace settings. And I can just uncheck display workspace. First two buttons are the exact same as the task side, so I'll set my view setting to ISO. I'll fit it to my screen. We also have a display setting in the device side. So this is going to be for sliders for robots, for tools, workpieces. You can explore this menu here. We just went through the display workspace and display wrist center. So this wrist center, if I were to play through, so I need to calculate. Over here on the left, you can see all of my dots are white. I'll calculate. And what this is doing is it's pre-processing all of your operations. So we have no kinematic errors and no collisions. If this dot were anything other than green, that would represent some kind of kinematic error, whether it be singularities, over travels, wrist flips, joint limits. And if we had a red lightning bolt, that would indicate a collision. But you can see this wrist trace here as I go through my operation. And this wrist trace is helpful in knowing where you can and can't reach. So if this part was outside of the bubble, this wrist trace, sections of it would be red. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Path drawing settings, just like in task. Selection settings. Usually I have this set to object because when I'm clicking near my object, I want to move my object. So if I come over here and I left click, I can now move this object wherever I want using this gnomon. If you have this set to point, then it's going to snap your tool to a point. So if I were to click here, you can see instead of selecting the object, it's going to select the point nearest where I clicked. I usually leave point unchecked and I just have object checked. CAD snapping, same as in task. We've got material deposition here. This would be able to simulate weld beads, cladding operations, things like that. We have a material removal icon here, which we'll get into in other tutorials as well, and a spraying simulation, which will be covered in its own tutorial. So those are the buttons up across the top. Over to the left, we have this icon here, which is references. This is where we will set up our user frame and our tool frame for this program. So if I just click on user frame manager, you can see I can come down here to user frame 1. User frame 0 is always world frame. So if I go to user frame 1, I can change what type of frame it is, if I want it to be attached to a frame that's in the task or the cell side, and then which frame that is. And we'll go over setting up user frames and how to do it properly in a later episode. Now that our user frame is set, you can see it's set to user frame 1, tool frame 1. We'll go through tool frames really quick. Again, I'm going to go up to References, I'm going to go to TCP Manager, and I'm going to go to Tool Frame List, and here I can create the TCP number that I want to use, or the tool frame that I want to use. And if it's set up properly on the tool setup side, automatic will work. Otherwise, you can come in here and select manual, and you can put your tool frame settings in as well. After that, we have our transition list. We'll go through this at some point as well. And we have our load processor package. This is the processor that takes the points from the software and outputs it to the robot-specific controller, whether it be Modoman, FANUC, KUKA, ABB, and so on. So down here, getting into some of the sections on the left, we do have a cycle time estimator here, which if you click, it'll pull up and tell you, out of process time, in process time, and total time. We have the post button. So this is the button you're going to click to generate your robot code. And then under that, we have the operations section, and this is a hierarchy. So we have our cell. Any settings that are changed in cell will trickle down to setup, program, and eventually operations. So this is just a hierarchy, always starting with the cell. We can have multiple setups if we want, and we can have multiple programs under each setup if we want to as well. Under that, we have unassigned operations. If we had an operation down here, probably because we just created it in our task side, and what we would need to do is right-click on that operation, go over to Assign To, and we would select Program 1. And then we also have our frame section similar to the task side down here. We've got our play bar to simulate our robot motion down here. And over on the left, we have a pseudocode that looks a little bit more like the code we would expect, with linear moves, joint moves, and things like that. You can also see that the operation name is here, just like it is right here. So if I were to go to contouring 1, you can see this is contouring 1. And these names can be changed. So if I wanted to name this, 1, 2, 3, I can just double click on this area and it will allow me to rename it whatever I want. And what's nice is this will actually post as a comment in the job when you send it to the robot. So you would have a comment that says 1, 2, 3, and then after that you would have all your points, similar to over here. Once all your points are done, you would see a comment for home and then your move home. So it makes it very easy to see which points are associated with which operation. The last thing I want to point out is down here in the bottom right, you can see there's a joint lists tab that's hidden. If I click these expansion arrows here, this is where I can see all of my joint values and where I can also adjust those joint values. That wraps it up for this introduction session. In the next one, we'll go into a little bit more detail. Thank you.